G'day everyone, my name's Nick. I'm from Central Coast Council. I'm one of our environmental education officers and I'm here today to talk about turtles. As you can see, we have a broad-shelled long-necked turtle here. I bet you knew that already. And they're a native species to New South Wales, but we don't normally find them on the Central Coast. This particular guy, his name's Francis, and he was actually found dumped on the Central Coast and looked like as though he'd been run over by a vehicle. So he has a crack on his shell. He was painstakingly cared for by local wildlife carers and now he's used for education. That's why he's here today, being the star of the show. So we're really lucky on the Central Coast that we do have native long-necked turtles called the eastern long-necked turtle that we can find in waterways on the Central Coast. And some of you may have seen them, you might have seen them even crossing roads. And they're really amazing creatures. They're really highly specialised to live in the water and also to be able to get out of the water at certain times of their life cycle, to either move to find new places or for the females to lay eggs. So what are their special features? Well, if you look closely at Francis's head, you can see his eyes are really high up on top of his head and his nostrils as well. So if he's swimming, he can just put the tip of his nose up out of the water to have a breath and also look out of the water because his eyes are up so high. If you look at the front of the mouth, it's a bit hard to see at the moment, but long-necked turtles here, like Francis, don't have teeth. They have sort of horny cutting plates on the side of their mouth which they use to grab their prey. And Francis here likes to eat fish, frogs, tadpoles, and also invertebrates that he might find in the water like yabbies. So obviously living in the water so much, you can see he's got really amazing webbed feet and claws on the end of his toes, which they use for climbing up banks of creeks and rivers and dams, and also for digging burrows and especially when the females lay their eggs in the side of the waterway. Obviously their shell is really strong. It's part of their body. It's not a separate feature. So if you have seen cartoons before where turtles run out of their shell, that's not reality. It's part of their body. It grows with them. And it's also very important for protection from predators. So if a predator or any other threat made Francis here feel threatened, he would pull his limbs and his head and neck back into the shell to keep him nice and safe. A couple of other amazing features about our long-necked turtles in Australia and freshwater turtles is that they do have quite good hearing. So if you look on the side of Francis's head, you can see round circular tympanums on the side there where they can actually hear what's going on in the outside world. And the coolest, weirdest, strangest fact I think about some of our freshwater turtles in Australia is they can actually breathe through their bum. Yep, you heard it right. They can actually exchange oxygen through the water, through their cloaca or their vent. And just in the interest of privacy, we won't do a close-up on that one. So you may be aware that a lot of turtle species around the world can live for a very long time. That's also true of our Australian native turtles and our freshwater turtles like Francis here. So 50, 70, 150 years even is the lifespan for some of these turtles. So that's a really important thing to consider if you'd ever like to keep a turtle as a pet. So the turtle, if you do get one, even as a child, will most likely or hopefully outlive you. So you need to think about that. It's a big decision to get a turtle as a pet. You might have to leave it in your will to your grandchildren. So on that point, keeping any native animal in Australia, in New South Wales especially, you need a native animal keeper's licence, which you can get online through the Office of Environment and Heritage website. And native animals, especially turtles, require a lot of specialised care. So you need a lot of knowledge, specialised food to feed them, and special enclosures to keep them in and keep them healthy. So one of the best ways to get that knowledge is to join your local reptile society, where you'll find really knowledgeable people, lots of resources, and have lots of help and advice to help you get your turtle all the way to 150. So like many species of animals all around the world, turtles have suffered due to habitat loss from human activities. So on the Central Coast, we've lost about 50% of our freshwater wetlands. So you can imagine the huge amount of habitat that's been lost to our freshwater turtles here. So some of the other threats that they face are being taken from the wild for the pet trade, poaching, being sold. People keep them as pets and then realise that they get too big or they're hard to look after and possibly just release them into the wild in a spot that may not be suitable to them. A lot of turtles get run over by cars as well. So on the Central Coast, the freshwater turtles, the eastern long-necked turtle, are quite nomadic, so at certain times of the year and depending on drought conditions or rainfall, they might get out of their waterway and go for a walk to find somewhere more suitable. So that's when they come into strife crossing roads. If you ever do come across a freshwater turtle crossing the road, if it's safe to do so and you're happy to get out and help, you could pull over safely, pick up the turtle and move it to the side of the road in the direction that it was facing. Don't put it back to the closest side where it came from, because then it's probably going to decide to walk back in the same direction that it wanted to, as instincts are pretty strong. One of the other big threats to turtle populations in Australia is predation by foxes. So foxes are an introduced animal and they have a very keen sense of smell. When a female freshwater turtle comes up onto the bank to lay her eggs, foxes can actually smell the eggs under the ground. They'll dig up the nest and eat all the eggs. There's been a few places on the Central Coast where I've seen multiple freshwater turtle nests on the side of wetlands that have been dug up and every single egg's been eaten by foxes. So that's a really terrible thing. If we keep losing all those young ones each year, eventually we'll only have big old turtles and no young ones coming through. Good news is that Council does manage a population of foxes on the Central Coast through baiting programs in appropriate areas. And if you do ever come across a red fox in suburban areas or bushland reserves, always report it to Council and we can use those locations to help manage the fox population. Another way we can help turtles out in the wild or on the suburbs around the Central Coast is by keeping our dogs on leashes and not letting them run through turtle habitat. So if you do come across a turtle that is sick, injured or in danger, the best thing to do is to call your local wildlife rescue group, which on the Central Coast is Wildlife Arc and Wires. It's also really important to note that if you do come across a turtle, not to pick it up and relocate it somewhere that you might think is more suitable, because you might be taking the turtle out of its natural habitat and out of its natural area. So I think you'll agree turtles are really amazing creatures, especially these freshwater ones that we have on the Central Coast. And if we all do our part to look after their habitat and think about what to do if we find a sick or injured one, then we'll have these turtles around for many years to come.